So the third short teaching of today, okay, to do with the Father. So this is Jeremiah's call in Jeremiah chapter 1. The word of the Lord came to me saying, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. Alas, sovereign Lord, I said, I do not know how to speak. I am too young. But the Lord said to me, do not say I am too young. You must go to everyone I send you to and say whatever I command you. Do not be afraid of them, for I am with you and will rescue you, declares the Lord. And later on in the chapter, after giving him a couple of visions, God says, today I have made you a fortified city, an iron pillar and a bronze wall to stand against the whole land, against the kings of Judah, its officials, its priests, and the people of the land. They will fight against you, but will not overcome you. For I am with you and will rescue you, declares the Lord. So, firstly, what was Jeremiah's self image? He said, I'm only a child or I'm only a youth. He says, I don't know how to speak. It reminds us of another mighty man, Moses, who decided that he didn't know how to speak. Okay? Jeremiah felt inadequate, ill equipped for what God was calling him to do. He was also fearful of the dangers, which were very real. And as we go through Jeremiah's story, you know that all sorts of awful things happened to him. And at one point, God said, oh, this awful thing has happened to you. Even more awful things are going to happen. So that was Jeremiah's story. Okay. So it's understandable that he was feeling this way. And a lot of us might feel that way. That's how we see ourselves: inadequate, ill equipped, fearful. Uh, Sometimes that just comes from a sense of how we feel about ourselves. At other times, it comes from what people have spoken into our lives. At other times, it may be from the fact that we have failed at something or repeatedly failed at something. And so that has now become the way that we see ourselves. We look at God's image of Jeremiah. He says, I see you as a prophet to the nations. He saw him as a prophet to the nations while he was still in the womb. We are all going gaga over Joshua, who has done nothing to deserve that except just to be. It also helps that he is an extremely cute baby and extremely uh, lovable and quiet and accommodating. Okay? Anila will come, she'll go and see some baby and come and say, oh, what a cute baby. So then I'll ask her, have you ever seen a not cute baby? Because otherwise it doesn't make any sense. Joni, what do you say? Correct. Because only then saying, oh, what a cute baby, what a beautiful baby makes any sense. If you say all babies are beautiful, then there's no meaning when Anila comes and says, oh, that baby was so beautiful. Doesn't mean anything, no? I saw it. Okay? So while he was in the womb, God is telling Jeremiah, while you were in the womb, I saw you. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. Okay? Knowing he was going to feel this way about himself. And that he was feeling this way right now. And here Jeremiah is saying, I do not know how to speak, I am too young. And all that implies, this is how I see myself. And God says, fortified city, iron pillar, bronze wall. That's how the same interaction, the same conversation, God is saying, this is how I see you. I have made you a fortified city, an iron pillar, bronze wall. These are all images of great strength and culture. Today we see a bronze wall, you don't know what that, in that time it was all, this is strength, this is security, this is protection. It was something powerful that God was saying. This is how I see you. You see yourself as a child or a youth and who cannot speak and you're fearful and all of that, but this is how I see you. And really, it's as simple as that. It's how we see ourselves and how God sees us. Okay? And maybe how other people see us as well. Okay? But the only thing that matters is how the Father sees us. We have to see ourselves through the Father's eyes. And he especially comes to us. I mean, just again, we go to the story of the son. Imagine how the son was seeing himself, and just see how the father saw the son. Through We see ourselves through our failures, maybe even through our successes. Maybe sometimes God has to take us a peg or two down. Yeah. But we just want to look at ourselves through how the Father sees us. And I know so many times I've had to really dial back because I'm seeing myself a certain way, especially when there's failure, you know, and and uh, God is showing me something else. I mean, just like this, just yesterday, when the worship was going on, when the second song started, and I broke down, and I think because um, I was telling Neston, I'm really discouraged about certain things to do with church, and God was just encouraging me through just that worship time. He told me, just look around, just look at your church. Some time ago, I got a lot of flack for calling this my church. It is our church, please, okay. But at one point, Paul says, my Jesus, okay. That's how personally he makes it. So God just said, just look around at your church. Yeah, this is uh, what you've been part of establishing. Well, I was looking at myself differently. Again today, this when I said Father, and we were all just saying Father, and what he says to, he said, open your eyes and look. These are your children. Okay, so he is looking differently. I'm looking at myself differently. Part of that can be how people have looked at me. I know how people are looking at me, for example, and I can internalize that. But the only thing that matters is how the Father looks at us, how the Father looks at each one of us. Okay? And so here we have Jeremiah looking at himself a certain way. We see the Father looking at him another way. And then it says, also as part of it, the Lord reached out his hand and touched my mouth and said to me, I have put my words in your mouth. See, today I appoint you over nations and kingdoms to uproot and tear down, to destroy and overthrow, to build and to plant. So Jeremiah said, I'm totally inadequate. It's as if God has not been listening to him. He said, I've appointed you for this mighty, mighty, mighty task. Later on, he tells them, this is how I actually see you. Okay? God touches him. In this case, he touches his mouth because he was going to use his mouth. That's all that Jeremiah used. He just spoke for some 50 odd chapters of the Bible. Okay? Uh, for other people, it may be he may touch our hands, our voices, or you know, other things in our lives he may touch, because that's how he wants to use us, because he has appointed us for a certain task. In this case, he touches his mouth. So does he in the case of Isaiah. Isaiah was also called to be a prophet. Yeah. For Moses, he gives him a staff, and amazing things happen through the staff. Okay? In every case, God is seeing us differently, and he wants to touch us for the purpose that he's seeing us for. That we cannot see ourselves in that situation. God told me I was going to lead a church. I'm not say pastor, okay, lead a church. I would have said no. I did not want to do it. I think I still don't want to do it. Okay? But God had to say, I see you, I choose you, I touch you, I equip you. Okay? And it's the same for each one of us. One of the things we've been feeling about this camp is that God wants to send us out from here with a mission, with a calling, if you don't have one. It doesn't mean that you go to China or to Nigeria, okay? Though you might. I was weird. I was telling Sandy and who you're praying with, Bonnie, about Azusa Street. And one of the things that happened, if you read those little prayer cards, they were praying for the baptism of the Spirit, and that Pentecostal thing happened about if you speak in tongues, you've been baptized, whatever. But people don't realize that at that time, the tongues they were getting were actual languages that they had not learned. Okay, and one of the amazing things that happened in Azusa Street Revival is that people would get a language of a country that they had not obviously learned or gone to, and they would see that as a sign that I'm called to a missionary in that country, and they would go off to that country. So one of the things that happened is many missionaries spread out having the language of that country because that's what they received at Azusa. So God touched them and gave them something, and that told them something about their mission. So that could happen. I'm not saying it can't happen, but God, I feel God wants to touch each one of us and send us back, maybe just to the places where we are. Like it's like what we did, this offering thing. We made items, and what were we saying? We're offering it, and the items, most of them are to do with our lives. Yeah, I made a little book with a pen. Okay, that I want to write. I'm giving him my writing. Okay. Uh, Viraj did something to with social media and all of that because he wants to do something about that. Different people have put different things there. I know that Rehan was making a football. It didn't look like a football when I saw him making it, but it was meant to be a football. Yeah, yeah. It looked like a football eventually. Okay, good. I saw it at the beginning. See, I saw through the wrong eyes. Later,